Time for the headlines now from Smerconish.com, the newsletter. By the way, fast becoming my favorite part of the program. Let me begin and say at the outset, happy Passover to everybody who's celebrating. Happy Easter. It's Good Friday. I hope everybody has a terrific, safe weekend with family and friends.
Happy Easter. Will you, Michael, be going to church this Sunday?
I hope to go to church this Sunday. I'll tell you this, if I go to church this Sunday, I will go with my head held high.
Why wouldn't you?
As not being a C&E Christian because I was in church last weekend.
Okay, Michael,
so there you go.
Last weekend was Palm Sunday.
That is correct.
That is under the Easter umbrella.
No.
Yes.
No. The Easter umbrella is Easter Sunday.
Michael, that would be
the Christmas umbrella is Christmas.
I think I'll go to church the Sunday before Christmas and then Christmas Eve. And
no,
I'm covered.
TC, no umbrella. No, umbrella is Sunday. That's it. Put on your finest. I've been to church. Do not take that away from me.
You know what? I'm thrilled that you go to church.
May I also issue an invitation and PSA for all rabbis and all clergy who are fans of the program. Please continue to promote the newsletter
from the
YouTube channel and encourage your congregants. If they want balance delivered daily, they must subscribe to Smerconish.com, the newsletter. Seriously, have a wonderful weekend and thank you for being tuned in. Yesterday, 10,479 votes cast on an Easter weekend related question. Are masks still needed on airplanes and public transit? Call it 70-30 of the 10,479 who voted. 69.49% said yes. I can't believe that. 70% still say airplanes and public transit. I am not in that category. Okay, they've extended it till May 2nd. I will continue to do my part, but I'd like to see us at least break that down into airports and airplanes, because if I can go to a stadium, if I can go to the Chase Center, as I did in San Francisco with 20,000 of my closest friends and watch Duke play Arkansas without a mask, why, when I walk into PHL, do I need to be masked up when I'm in a big open space and there happen to be a lot of people there? And it doesn't make any sense to me. TC, yesterday, speaking of the travel weekend and the pent-up demand for people to get out and fly, I mentioned here, and we had a headline in the newsletter about how at Philadelphia Airport, yesterday being Thursday, and I think it was a Wednesday night story, already the airport was saying, we have no spaces.
From Wednesday on.
We have no parking spaces.
Wednesday. They were issuing, they wanted to get it out in the public so that you had a different way of getting to the airport. You know, interestingly, we're flying this afternoon, going down to Raleigh for Easter. We will take an Uber.
Yeah, right. In other words, you're not going to even drive your own car.
Absolutely not. And we would have just jumped in the car and gone. No, we wouldn't have even thought about it. We would not have even thought about it. So thankful for that. And then it was interesting. Yesterday, you mentioned this on our CNN call, and your EP, your executive producer for your CNN program, Catherine, said, whoa, wait a minute. We're actually flying out of Philadelphia for our Easter break, driving from New Jersey. I got to figure this out. Do you know that she emailed me last night and said that the hotels in the area are renting parking spaces and have a shuttle going to the airport?
Wow. I wonder what they're getting.
We got to ask her.
I wonder what they're getting. I would have recommended, driving into Center City and parking your car.
Park at my house, take an Uber.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Except you still have that construction pod out front. So
it's not there
they might want to have it was only there for 6 months.
Why are you so obsessed with that? We had storage issues, okay? With
the neighbors complained. That's all I know. The neighbors complained.
Wow.
And then Joey had to move his boat and put it around back because they didn't want to see that out front every day either.
Stop. Hey, what can I say? We live on the less desirable south side of town. You live on the more desirable north side of town.
It's not true.
So true.
All right. Senator Steve Daines, the first American politician of stature to actually visit Ukraine, first U.S. Senator, Republican Steve Daines of Montana. He traveled with Representative Victoria Spartz, a Republican of Indiana, herself born in Ukraine. Hours after Daines' trip, the White House press secretary Jen Psaki said the White House not considering sending President Biden to Ukraine. There's a lot of Ukraine news, not the least of which is that the Moskva, which is that boat that, the Ukrainians in protest of the Russians had said F you to that particular boat. It sunk in the Black Sea. The flagship of Russia's Black Sea fleet sunk after an explosion seriously damaged the vessel as it floated off the coast of Ukraine. And of course, there are now competing narratives. Was it a missile strike? Was it something offensive from Ukraine that caused this 500-person crew ship to sink? Or was it, as Russian state media reported, it was in a storm? And the storm did damage to the hull and there was a fire and, there's nothing to see here. Go about your business. This incident is such a throwback to the Cold War. And the question, I guess, that is raised is one of whether in a technologically advanced era where everybody's got a phone in their pocket, can you keep news of this size and stature from the Russian people? Are the Russian people going to know that, hey, Ukraine sunk your battleship? That is the question. Russia warning the United States in a formal way. Washington Post has this story. They sent a formal diplomatic note to the United States warning that U.S. and NATO shipments of the most sensitive weapons systems to Ukraine will be adding fuel to the conflict and could bring about, quote unquote, unpredictable consequences. This is described as a diplomatic démarche. Am I pronouncing that correctly? D with an apostrophe, Marche, a copy of which was received by the Washington Post. How would you say that?
Démarche? I would say démarche.
Démarche.
But I think that's just me.
In other sort of Russia-threatening news from CNBC, Russia says a nuclear-free Baltic region would no longer be possible if Finland and Sweden became NATO members, alluding to additional nuclear deployments in Europe. It's going to be very interesting to see whether Finland and Sweden, as a result of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, now do something that NATO's long wanted them as partners, especially because of that long Finnish border with NATO. Will they join NATO? Today's survey question, love this subject, at Smerconish.com. Does Twitter content require more or less regulation? This, of course, is all about Elon Musk and now his attempt at taking over Twitter. He spoke at a TED Talk. This is kind of funny to say. He spoke at a TED Talk in Vancouver, British Columbia. Perhaps you'd like to ask me, how did I know he was in Vancouver, British Columbia?
How did you know he was in Vancouver, British Columbia?
Because that kid who tracks his plane
had
and I saw it in my Twitter feed. Like Elon Musk is in Vancouver. Like, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah,
why is he there?
It's interesting because you often said that doesn't necessarily mean that he himself is on the plane. That just means his plane is somewhere. In this case, it was correct. That's really, really interesting.
The thing what's
going to happen to that Twitter feed?
The thing that I guess he's just living with it now.
No, when he buys it though. What's going to happen to the Twitter feed?
well, if he really, okay, how about this? In the TED Talk yesterday, his definition of free speech is someone you don't like allowed to say something you don't like. If that is the case, then we have free speech. Okay, let's apply that standard to the kid.
Right.
Elon Musk doesn't like that kid tracking his plane.
I know, but is that, you and I have talked about this, and with, like, right here, we've talked about it, saying, is that free speech, or is there any kind of danger or security risk involved with people knowing where his plane is? That's the question.
On the difficult content moderation calls, Musk said this: if it's a gray area, I would say let the tweet exist. I do think we want to be very reluctant to delete things and just be very cautious with permanent bans. Timeouts, I think, are better. Here's the real story about Elon Musk. I was floored last night, clicking around, watching everything, trying to consume a lot of content, as to how Elon Musk was owned in some quarters and disowned in others. To those folks, I say, be careful what you wish for, because I don't think he's one of you. I don't think he's red. I don't think he's blue. I am hoping he's one of us. I think he's purple. I think that Elon Musk is, above all else, an innovator, a critical thinker, and the opposite of an ideologue. And yet, I see him being so warmly embraced by the right and cast aside now by the left. I don't think that he's a conservative. I don't think that he's a classic progressive. I think he's somewhere in between. I think that he is a mixed bag. And I have been doing, and others have been doing for me, namely at CNN, because I'm going to talk about this tomorrow, research to find out, like, who politically speaking is this guy? And let me just give you an example. Open Secrets, the nonprofit lobbying watchdog, has taken a look at his political giving. He's given a total of $1.2 million to politicians, parties, political action committees, PACs, and referendum campaigns since 2002. He's not a big giver. I mean, that is chump change if you're Elon Musk. And the money went equally to Democrats and Republicans. 542,000 went to Democrats, 574,500 Republicans, another 85,000 going to two broadly left-wing referendum campaigns in California. The balance has fluctuated over the years. In 2006, 2013, 2017, he donated overwhelmingly to Republicans. In 2015, he gave exclusively to Democrats. He also gave a total of $30,000 to a PAC set up by SpaceX, which donated 54% of its total to Democrats, 46% to Republicans. Many of the individual politicians he gave to were state legislators in California, where Tesla was formerly based, and Texas, where SpaceX has long maintained rocket testing and launch facilities. You know who he sounds like in that regard? Donald Trump. He's a businessman. He's made donations in areas where he's doing business, I'm sure, to make sure that he can continue to do business on favorable terms. What about his social views? Oh, by the way, The Independent. It's a paywall, and I can't, we were able to navigate around it. I hope you'll be able to. It's posted at Smerconish.com. But take a look at the Independent analysis of Elon Musk, because it has all of this information that I am sharing with you. Quote, what about Mr. Musk's social views? He clearly has a strong libertarian streak, favoring direct democracy over representative democracy and proposing that a future Martian colony should be allowed any law to be overturned by a vote of 40% of its citizens. A future Martian colony, okay, should be permitted to have an overturning of its laws by 40% of the citizenry. He's a very complex individual, is the answer. And people are having conniptions about Elon Musk and the prospect of him owning Twitter. I myself love the debate. Think that Twitter, the survey question today, does it need more or less regulation? I happen to think it needs less regulation. Let's also call out what's really going on here. I think that the big question many people want to know is, does it mean Donald Trump gets to come back to Twitter? And Musk, I don't think, TC, has offered a concrete answer to that question.
He hasn't offered a concrete answer, but when he says that he thinks that outright bans are not the way to go, that timeouts is, I think, the word he used, that's pretty clear.
Don't you think?
There's been a long timeout. I feel like that's as close to saying that if he were in charge, Donald Trump would be back on Twitter. I think I took it to mean that.
Hey, in a related story, and it's posted on the website from CBS Sports, who has a funny sense of humor, is Tom Brady. Because Brady has tweeted at Musk, and he has asked him if he buys Twitter, will he please delete the combine photo, which we've published at the website today. It's hysterical. And I see some people did this in memes, if you put Musk's face, his head, on Brady's body, back when Brady performed or worked out at the 2000 NFL Combine, I could convince you that it is Musk and Musk's body.
It pretty much fits.
It doesn't look like Brady.
No.
I mean, Brady is not the stud, famous for his TB12 diet. And also, just in terms of another insight into Musk and why Musk is so popular, among the young men in my house, TC, at the outset of the TED Talk, you know what I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Go ahead, tell everybody.
So it was hysterical. So he was being interviewed by someone, and they walked out on the stage and sat down, and the guy gave a good, he actually gave a good intro. He said something about like, so a few hours ago, the news broke about Twitter, and everybody laughs. And Elon Musk says, oh, how did you know? It was funny. But then Elon Musk looked behind him, and, big Ted on the wall, and he was like, hey, have you seen the movie with the bear with Ted? Yeah, it's a good movie, and brought the house down.
And it is a good movie.
Oh my God.
I've said so many times that when I first heard that it was Mark Wahlberg and a bear,
a talking stuffed teddy bear,
a stuffed teddy bear. I'm not watching. And then one night I'm clicking through and I'm like, oh my God, this is. And of course, Brady is in Ted 2.
Spectacularly.
And right, hysterical when they take a look. If you haven't seen it, watch it. You'll you will love it. You will love it. This is interesting. So the RNC has voted to boycott the biased Commission on Presidential Debates. This is kind of an ongoing story. I have been following it. Republican presidential candidates will no longer participate in debates hosted by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The RNC announced on Wednesday. I mean, it sets up the prospect that maybe there wouldn't be presidential debates. A subject I've been talking about on radio is how, in the context of the midterm elections, in the Senate elections, there are a lot of candidates who just will not debate. Herschel Walker didn't show up for a debate in Georgia. And the pattern is when a candidate is ahead, John Fetterman, a Democrat, doing the same thing in Pennsylvania. They don't want to risk their lead. They don't want to get hurt. What could possibly happen in a debate? Only that I will put my foot in my mouth and end up harming my prospects. But what's interesting to me is that when you read the stories, any of the stories about this subject, you'll see reference. For example, I am looking at Politico's coverage. One of the debate moderators, then C-SPAN host Steve Scully, was criticized as being biased by the Trump campaign, the RNC, and right-wing media because he had interned for then Senator Joe Biden when he was in college. Okay? Do you remember this? And Steve Scully is a friend. I love when he guest hosts for me here on POTUS. So maybe I'm biased for Steve. Steve Scully was, I think, 17 years old at American University, began interning for Republican John Hines. He's an Erie guy. And then interned for Joe Biden. I don't know if Steve was in the Washington semester program. I need to ask him because I was in the Washington semester program. And it's a bunch of college kids who come together at American University and get any internship they can get. I mean, the idea that Steve Scully, who is so down the middle, so measured, so fair, so nonpartisan, is the poster? Steve Scully? You've got to be blanking me. Surely there's another example you can find of a debate moderator who, had been politically active. But this is like the Republicans debating in Pennsylvania, where the Republicans had a primary debate, gubernatorial primary debate. You had to be a Republican, you had to be a Pennsylvania resident, and you could never have spoken ill of any of the candidates. I mean, this reminds me of the Russians saying that there was a storm that took down that ship. That's how nutty it is. Makes no sense. This is a sad but sensitive story. Dianne Feinstein. I mean, it was the San Francisco Chronicle that had 4 U.S. senators, 3 Democrats, 3 former staffers, and a California Democrat serving in the House all say, hey, her memory is rapidly deteriorating. What are we going to do about this? Feinstein released a statement yesterday and said, the real question is whether I'm an effective representative for 40 million Californians. The record shows that I am. So seemingly she's going to hang in. Finally, I thought this was really interesting. There's a great story from the Wall Street Journal. Warren Buffett, the house where he launched his business empire, is for sale. 3,300 square foot home located in the upscale Dundee neighborhood of Omaha. Yours for an asking price of $799,000. An arched door in the sunroom of the home has Mr. Buffett's signature and the words, the birthplace of Buffett Associates, May 1956. He moved from that home with his wife to another home for $31,500 and still lives in it. And if you've seen that documentary about Warren Buffett, when he goes and gets an Egg McMuffin at a drive-through window, if you haven't seen it, it's really great. Charlie Rose just had a sit down with Warren Buffett. TC, 4 years since Charlie Rose was dumped by CBS News and PBS. I had no idea that much time had gone off the clock.
I would have said it was last year. I swear I would have said it was last year. But yeah, sit down over an hour conversation on his own website. It's
interesting that Buffett sat for the interview.
Right.
Look, I mean, how long do you want Charlie Rose to have to sit out?
Right. Well, we've had this
conversation many, many times.
Right.
Final story, and it comes from the Daily Mail, so it must be true.
Must be true.
How did Meghan get through Customs and Border Patrol?
Oh my gosh, what is wrong with you?
She snuck into the motherland and apparently met with the Queen. The Queen, so dignified, she was willing to entertain her.
You mean her grandmother-in-law? I think that's lovely.
Grandmother-in-law.
I think that
grandmother-in-law.
That's what she is.
Harry deserves to be spanked while he's back in that country.
Stop with yourself. This is family. Families are complicated. You have no idea. I think it is.
Oh, lovely. I have ideas. I follow Meghan's father. I have plenty of ideas.
Oh, there's the font of knowledge for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, those are the headlines from Smerconish.com. The newsletter looks awesome. Register and share it with a friend.